My family and I embarked on a thrilling adventure from our cozy home in New York all the way to the magical world of Disney in sunny Florida. We were so excited that we decided to drive through the night, aiming to save some money by avoiding a hotel stay. With my wife and our two wonderful kids in the back seat, we set off on our journey. As we made our way through Georgia, the clock struck 11 o'clock at night. The highway stretched before us, quiet and peaceful. There were hardly any other cars in sight, and the road seemed to belong to us alone. The night enveloped us with its mysterious charm as I focused on driving as smoothly as possible, not to disturb my sleeping family. Suddenly, on the horizon, two flashing red lights caught my attention. They weren't the typical police lights. Instead, they resembled SOS signals. Concerned and cautious, I slowed down and approached with care. My heart raced as I noticed a car deliberately blocking the road, along with two cones placed on either side. The SOS lights continued to flash on the ground, adding an eerie glow to the scene. Then, two hooded men of African American descent emerged from behind the car and started walking towards us. Instinctively, I shifted the car into reverse, ready to make a swift escape. As one of the men reached my window, I cracked it open ever so slightly, allowing me to hear his voice. He asked if we needed help, but something didn't feel right. I quickly shut the window, sensing danger as he reached for something in his pocket. Without hesitation, I put the car back into drive and pressed the gas pedal, determined to leave the unsettling situation behind. As I maneuvered past their car, driving over the cone and SOS light, a wave of relief washed over me. But the feeling was short-lived. Merely a minute later, I spotted headlights rapidly approaching from behind. Panic surged through me as I realized we were being followed. The car tailing us began flashing its lights, and within moments, I heard a loud pop, and our car started losing control. Desperately, I fought to keep it on the road, but a second pop caused the car to drag, and our sense of safety shattered. Amidst the chaos, my wife awoke, her confusion quickly turning into fear as she questioned our speed and the events unfolding. I urged her not to make any loud noises, whispering that we were being pursued. The car behind us continued to ram our trunk, intensifying the terror that had gripped us all. Our children, now awake and terrified, added their cries to the mix. My wife, in a state of panic, dialed 911, hoping for a miracle, even though time felt like it was playing tricks on us. I fought to keep the car moving for as long as possible, enduring the relentless pursuit. The car behind us persisted in its aggressive assault, threatening to bring us to a tragic end. My heart sank, and I feared that all hope was lost. But like a beacon of hope, a siren pierced the night, and I glimpsed red and blue flashing lights in the distance, steadily approaching our pursuers. Miraculously, they veered off towards an exit that coincided with our passing, and the police car followed them, swift and determined. With trembling hands, I pulled our car to the side of the road, a mix of emotions overwhelming me. I took the phone from my wife and recounted the entire terrifying ordeal to the police, including the realization that our two back tires had been blown, most likely shot at. I spilled out every detail to the police as the adrenaline coursed through my veins, my voice a mixture of fear, relief, and gratitude. Just 10 minutes later, a squad car pulled up behind us, accompanied by a friendly tow truck. They were thrilled to inform us that the two men responsible for terrorizing us had been captured. It turned out that someone else had stumbled upon their sinister roadblock trap, but managed to escape and alert the authorities before reaching us. When I was 19 years old woman, I had a job at a really old and rundown motel. It wasn't the best place to work, let me tell you. Most of the people who stayed there were locals, and they were up to all sorts of things they shouldn't have been doing. The police were regular visitors, coming by multiple times a week. My job was double duty, working both as a front desk person and a housekeeper. One afternoon, I was assigned to clean the rooms in the second building of the motel. It was the backside, far away from the office. I never liked working over there because those rooms were the most worn down, and it always felt too quiet and creepy. But I had to get the job done, so I pushed myself to hurry up. As I entered one of the last rooms to clean, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. Suddenly, something caught my eye. A man in the reflection, staring at me. He was a middle-aged man, dirty, with long, greasy hair. Startled, I couldn't help but scream, "Oh my God!" He scared me so much. The room I was cleaning was supposed to be empty, so there was no reason for him to be there, watching me. But then, I remembered the meeting we had about customer satisfaction. My boss wanted us to be extra polite and helpful to the guests. So even though I was scared, I tried to stay calm and be polite. I cautiously asked the man, "Sir, can I help you with anything? Maybe some towels?" I thought maybe he wanted to give me a tip for cleaning his room earlier, but what he did next sent shivers down my spine. The man just stared back at me with a crooked grin and held out his hands as if offering me something. I looked down, and to my surprise, there was a $100 bill in his hands. $100. My mind started racing. Who tips $100 for a $40 room? It didn't make any sense. Alarms started going off in my head, warning me that something was not right. I mustered up the courage to ask him why he was trying to give me $100. The man's voice, deep and throaty, sent chills down my spine as he replied, "My wife and I were watching you, and we just wanted to have some fun with you." The words struck fear into my heart. Panic gripped me as I realized there was no wife, no reason for this man to be watching me clean. I knew I couldn't go along with whatever sick game he had in mind. I told him firmly, my voice trembling, "No, I can't do that, sir. I'm sorry, but I have a lot of work to do for the day." I prayed to God that he would just go away. Thankfully, after a moment, he smiled again, but this time his tone softened. He invited me into his room to meet his wife, just to talk, he said. But I knew in my gut that it was a trap. Fear consumed me as I realized I was trapped in that room. The man was blocking the only exit, and I didn't know what he was capable of. I made a quick decision to protect myself. I locked the room from the inside, and immediately went to the phone to call my manager at the front desk. But when I picked up the phone, it wasn't working. Panic surged through me, and I started to lose control. Thoughts raced through my mind. Did he cut the phone line? It wouldn't be surprising in this crummy motel, but I couldn't waste any more time. I remembered that I had my cell phone in my housekeeping card, but it was outside the locked door. I had to retrieve it somehow. With trembling hands, I cautiously opened the door of the room I was cleaning and peeked outside. I didn't see anyone, so I frantically searched my card for my cell phone. Time was slipping away and I couldn't find it. Frustrated, I made a split-second decision. I decided to run as fast as I could, making a break for the front desk in the office. But just as I turned the corner, I heard the man's voice again. This time, he was screaming to someone else, "She's running! She's getting away!" My heart pounded in my chest as I heard his shoes slamming against the pavement, closing in on me. Fear gave me wings as I raced towards my only chance of escape. I grabbed my keycard and let myself into a stockroom, quickly locking the door behind me. Inside, I trembled uncontrollably, my whole body shaking with fear. Outside, I could hear the man and someone else searching for me. Time stood still as I huddled in that stockroom, praying that they wouldn't find me. 30 agonizing minutes passed, and the sound of their footsteps faded away. I mustered all the courage I had left and made a decision. I had to reach the front desk, no matter what. With shaky legs and a racing heart, I ventured out of the stockroom and ran the rest of the way to the front desk. When I finally arrived, I collapsed into my boss's arms, tears streaming down my face. He called the police immediately, but the man and whoever else was with him had managed to escape before the police arrived. They disappeared, leaving behind only fear and unanswered questions. The police conducted a search and discovered that this man had a history. He was wanted for sexual assault and gross sexual imposition, and had even been charged with rape in the past. It sent chills down my spine to think about what could have happened if I hadn't escaped. A few weeks later, on my birthday of all days, that man was finally caught. It brought some sense of closure, but the fear and trauma lingered. A few weeks after that incident, I made a decision that would change my life. I quit that job. I vowed never to work at another motel again, haunted by the memories of that horrifying encounter. When I was just 14 years old, I lived with my family in a small rural town in sunny Florida. It was a place filled with warm days and green fields, and I often found myself missing the beauty of that place. However, there was one particular night that I will never forget. A stormy Saturday night that brought with it a constant downpour of rain. On that stormy evening, the thunder roared so loudly that it shook our entire house. My mom, dad, two brothers and sister were all at home, seeking shelter from the fierce storm. My sister had gone to a friend's house, so it was just me and my two brothers trying to find something to do to pass the time. It was only 8 o'clock, and we decided to play some video games to keep ourselves entertained. We stumbled upon a peculiar PS2 game where the WWE wrestlers were driving cars and shooting at each other. Although I can't recall the name of the game, I can still vividly remember the exact moment when the power abruptly went out. I was in the middle of a heated battle with my brother, about to deliver the final blow, when darkness enveloped the room. In that instant, we heard a loud popping sound coming from outside, followed by an eerie silence that settled over the house. We assumed that a fuse had blown on one of the power outside, so we hurried to call our dad for help. As we made our way to the front door, we saw our dad already wearing his rain peterette, preparing to venture outside and investigate. He asked me to join him and hold a flashlight, shining it on the outdoor fuse box while he worked on resetting the fuses. Reluctantly, I followed him outside, and as we braved the heavy rain, he opened up the fuse box attached to the telephone pole in our front yard. With determination, he began flicking the switches, hoping to restore the power. But no matter how many switches he tried, the lights remained off. My dad, not one to give up easily, suggested that I continue flicking the switches outside while he went inside to tackle the indoor fuse box. The rain was pouring relentlessly, and I just wanted to go back inside where it was warm and dry. With the flashlight in my hand, I aimed it at the fuse box and focused on my task. Amidst the deafening sound of rain pounding on the ground, I thought I heard a strange noise emanating from the woods behind our house. It was like the crack of a giant log breaking under pressure. Curiosity got the better of me, and I directed the flashlight beam towards the source of the sound. For a fleeting moment, I thought I saw an arm extending from behind a tree, but as soon as the light exposed it, the arm swiftly retreated behind the trunk. Startled, I hastily closed the fuse box, leaving my dad outside, and dashed up the front patio steps, desperately seeking refuge inside the house. I rushed to find my dad, who was still tampering with the switches inside the fuse box closet. Breathless and shaken, I conveyed what I had seen in the woods, but he didn't seem to take my words seriously. Nevertheless, he decided to investigate and asked me to stay inside while he ventured back into the woods. I anxiously stayed by the back patio, shrouded in darkness. Raindrops continued their relentless assault on the earth, making it difficult to hear anything beyond their clamor. I mustered the courage to call out for my dad repeatedly, hoping he would hear me over the tumultuous downpour. Suddenly, amidst the cacophony of rain, I discerned faint footsteps in the distance. Once again I called out for my dad, and to my relief, I heard his response. But what troubled me was that his voice seemed to come from a completely different direction than the approaching footsteps. Panic surged within me as I sprinted towards the sound of my dad's voice, desperate to find him. Eventually, I stumbled upon my dad making his way back to the house, visibly exhausted and out of breath. I could barely contain myself as I recounted the footsteps I had heard from another direction. Concern etched on his face, my dad told me to go back inside and promptly locked the door behind us. He resolved to continue his search, urging us to stay upstairs and remain safe. As my brother's mom and I gathered by the back door, we anxiously awaited my dad's return from the dark and treacherous woods. Every passing second felt like an eternity, and tension hung heavy in the air. Then, a chilling sound pierced the silence, an ominous rattling at the front door as if someone was trying to force their way inside. Instinctively, I moved closer to investigate, but my mom grabbed hold of me and looked through the peephole. Her scream filled the air, causing a surge of fear to course through my veins. Urgently, she ushered me away from the door, guiding us upstairs for safety. Meanwhile, my dad burst back into the house through the back door, his face etched with a mixture of anger and concern. I didn't witness what unfolded next, but I could hear my dad's voice raised in a fierce confrontation with someone outside. After what felt like an eternity, he returned to us, his expression a blend of frustration and relief. He confirmed seeing a person fleeing into the woods, undoubtedly the same one responsible for the disturbing events of that night. We thought the ordeal had ended there, but the following morning brought a chilling revelation. We discovered that the window of our basement had been shattered, leaving behind shards of glass scattered across the floor. Muddy footprints marred the once pristine carpet, leading from the broken window and up the stairs. It sent shivers down our spines, realizing that this intruder had made their way so close to our living quarters, possibly even our bedrooms. Thankfully, the heavy-duty lock on the basement doors seemed to have stopped the trespasser from venturing further into our home. The thought of what could have happened sent a shudder through each of us, emphasizing the gravity of the situation. We reported the incident to the police, who promised to investigate the break-in and ensure our safety. During my first year of university, I made friends with a few other students. Our university has a rich history filled with ghostly figures and tales of paranormal activity. The campus janitors and security guards often shared stories of unusual occurrences. The building that housed the art and design faculty was the oldest on campus, and my class took place in the section rumored to be haunted. It was a late afternoon, just before 5 o'clock, when one of my new friends needed to use the restroom. She asked me to accompany her, and I gladly agreed, seeing it as a chance to rest my eyes from the strain of the projector. We walked towards the old and somewhat eerie bathroom located within the art and design building. My friend hurried into one of the stalls, and I patiently waited outside, thinking she would take longer than anticipated. As I stood outside the bathroom, the dimly lit corridor seemed strangely quiet. The air felt heavy with an unexplainable tension. I couldn't shake off a slight unease that crept up on me. Just as I was about to turn back and head to class without notifying my friend, a sense of curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to know what made this section of the building so notorious. I quietly entered the classroom and found a seat, hoping to catch a few minutes of rest before my friend returned. But to my surprise, she burst into the class, calling out my name in a panic-stricken voice. She looked distressed, and her eyes widened with fear. According to her, she had heard the sound of the sinks turning on in the bathroom and assumed it was me playing a prank. Curiosity got the better of her, and she opened the door to the bathroom, only to find no one inside except herself. However, the stall next to hers was locked from the inside. Thinking someone else was using it, she asked if it was me, but there was no response. Becoming more intrigued and slightly unnerved, she peered through the gap between the stall doors only to see no shoes or legs. Instead, she heard faint whispers and a hauntingly eerie humming coming from that very stall. Frightened by the inexplicable occurrence, she hurriedly left the bathroom without saying another word. The rest of the class passed in a haze of confusion and unease. As we left the campus that day, the incident still fresh in our minds, we decided to seek answers. We approached one of the janitors known for his knowledge of the campus's secrets. He listened intently to our story, a knowing smile playing on his lips. With a solemn voice, he shared the story of the haunted restroom. According to him, the spirit of a woman lingered within those stall walls. He revealed that no one should ever be in that restroom after 5 o'clock in the evening. It was as if the spirit had claimed that time as her own, haunting the unsuspecting visitors who dared to enter. From that day onward, my friends and I made a pact to avoid using the bathrooms after the designated time. We didn't know if the stories were true, but the fear and uncertainty were enough to convince us. As junior students in the university, we chose not to challenge the supernatural forces said to reside within the haunted stall. The incident left us pondering the mysteries that lie within the old walls of our university. While we couldn't confirm the truth behind the tales, the strange occurrence and the words of the janitor stayed with us. My 4 buddies and I decided to go on a thrilling adventure in a beautiful place called Green Valley. I was 24 years old at that time. We had planned to spend a whole week at a cozy cabin owned by my friend Peter. The cabin was nestled deep in the woods, far away from the noisy city. It was the perfect place for hunting, skiing, off-roading, and playing paintball. We couldn't wait to escape the hustle and bustle of the city and enjoy a peaceful time in the rural countryside. On a warm August day in 2014, we embarked on our journey. We left Massachusetts around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, filled with excitement and anticipation. As we drove towards Green Valley, we made a few stops along the way. It was already getting dark when we finally reached the outskirts of the valley at around 7:30 in the evening. The isolated country roads felt a little spooky as darkness enveloped the surroundings. Suddenly, Peter slammed on the brakes, causing the car to screech to a halt. Our hearts skipped a beat when we noticed that the front door of the cabin was wide open. To make matters worse, we saw a flashlight moving inside the house, visible through the window. Fear gripped us, and Matt, one of my buddies, exclaimed, "Dude, we need to get out of here!" But Peter surprised us all. Without hesitating, he stepped on the gas and drove towards the cabin, honking the car horn for a solid 10 seconds. The light inside the cabin disappeared, leaving only darkness and an eerie feeling. Peter exclaimed, "All right, let's go." He got out of the car with determination, and we followed him closely, entering the cabin with our phone flashlights in hand. My heart pounded in my chest as I cautiously explored the main floor with two of my friends, while Peter and Matt headed to the basement. The electricity hadn't been turned on yet, so the only source of light was our feeble phone flashlights. I checked the kitchen, Alex inspected a small bedroom and bathroom, and Amir explored a nearby bedroom. I decided to search the master bedroom located at the end of the hallway. As I tiptoed towards the master bedroom, my footsteps echoing in the silence, my senses were on high alert. The room seemed empty, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was wrong. I mustered up my courage and slowly reached out my hand towards the doorknob of a sliding closet. Just as my hand was about to touch it, a sudden sound from the basement made me freeze in my tracks. I heard Peter and Matt screaming in terror simultaneously. Startled, I turned towards the closet, and to my horror, the door swung open with a forceful pull. A person emerged from the darkness, grabbing me tightly and trapping me in a terrifying hold. I screamed, desperately trying to catch the attention of my friends who were still downstairs. Thankfully, Peter and Matt heard my cries for help and rushed to my aid. With a burst of strength, they managed to pull the intruder off me. He swiftly fled the house, disappearing into the surrounding forest. Trembling with fear, we all hurried downstairs, expecting to find more intruders, or perhaps something even worse. What we encountered in the basement was beyond our worst nightmares. The moment we reached the bottom of the stairs, a putrid smell assaulted our senses, and our eyes were met with a gruesome sight. Two lifeless bodies lay before us, their limbs missing, and blood splattered across the cold concrete floor. It was the most horrifying scene I had ever witnessed. We scrambled out of the house as fast as our legs could carry us, determined to find the man who had attacked me. However, the dense forest that surrounded the cabin made it impossible to track him down. Soon, the sheriff's department arrived to investigate the horrific crime. The area became a chaotic scene with police officers, crime scene tape, and the meticulous collection of evidence. The victims were later identified as two Indian barbershop workers, but the motive behind the murders remained unknown. It was a haunting and disturbing experience that left a deep scar on all of us. When I was 23 years old, something happened that has stayed with me even now, at 27. Every week, without fail, I find myself thinking about that unforgettable trip we took to celebrate our friend Andrew's 21st birthday in the bustling city of Vegas. Andrew was always a laid-back and somewhat shy guy, and we knew he hadn't yet experienced certain things in life. So being the caring friends we were, we decided to plan a wild adventure for him. Our mission was clear: get him a little tipsy and, well, help him find love, or, to put it simply, get him laid. We checked into the Carriage House Hotel, one of the more affordable places we could find. Since we were a group of 7, we had 2 separate rooms. I stayed in one with 4 of our friends, while Andrew had his own room. Our first priority, of course, was to satisfy our rumbling bellies, so we quickly grabbed a bite to eat before heading to the casinos just for the experience. Out of the 7 of us, only one person managed to leave the casino with more money than they entered. We moved on to explore various bars as the night progressed, and with each passing hour, things became blurrier and laughter filled the air. Eventually, we ended up in a wild nightclub, the kind where people let loose and have a great time. In the midst of the chaos, we noticed 2 of our friends, John and Eddie, leaving the club with a couple of girls. They gave us that mischievous look, telling us they were about to get lucky. The rest of us, filled with excitement and determination, tried our best to push Andrew to approach a girl or even hit the dance floor. But even in his slightly intoxicated state, he remained too shy to make a move. Desperation set in as we realized that, at this rate, Andrew wouldn't meet any girls throughout the entire trip. We made a decision that some might consider strange or odd, but in our heavily inebriated minds, it seemed like the only solution. We decided to search for a working girl to ensure Andrew had a memorable night. We stumbled upon a girl walking alone, and in our drunken state, we approached her like a bunch of fools. We asked if she would be interested in hanging out with our friend Andrew, who was noticeably less intoxicated than the rest of us, but still in a hazy state. I don't recall exactly what she said, but I remember her voice sounding slightly deep, which caught my attention. She scrutinized Andrew from head to toe, analyzing him in a way that made me take notice. Whatever her response was, it led to her grabbing Andrew's arm, and the two of them walked off down the sidewalk. We laughed as we witnessed Andrew's evident awkwardness, but none of us found the situation strange at the time. Out of curiosity and a desire to see what would happen, we decided to trail behind them. As we followed, it felt like an eternity, but I estimate it was around 15 minutes. The street grew darker and quieter, a stark contrast to the liveliness of the club district. Finally, they entered a building that seemed to be an apartment complex, and we decided to leave and head back to the club. We were proud and happy for Andrew, believing he was about to have a fantastic night. When we returned to the hotel around 2 in the morning, Andrew was nowhere to be found in either of our rooms. A hint of concern began to creep in as I started to sober up. John and Eddie, who weren't with us earlier, were shocked to hear about what happened. We all assumed Andrew had simply decided to spend the night with the girl, but it felt out of character for him, which made it all the more puzzling. I attempted to contact Andrew by text and phone, but he never answered. My friends reassured me, telling me to relax and that everything would be fine. Exhausted from the night's events, I crashed into sleep within minutes. The ringing phone jolted me awake. In my groggy state, I initially mistook it for my alarm clock, fumbling to tap my phone to turn it off. Gradually, I realized it was an actual call. I glanced at the screen, and my heart sank for some unknown reason. It was Andrew's number. I informed my already awake friends about the call as I answered, placing the phone on speaker so that everyone could hear. What came through the phone was heavy breathing, as if Andrew was in the midst of a panic attack. We tried to engage him, but he didn't respond to anything we said. The line fell silent, leaving us all shouting into the phone, desperate to know if he was okay, where he was, and what was happening. Then, a sound shattered the silence on the other end, a door being forcefully opened, followed by a piercing, horrifying scream of Andrew. The call abruptly ended. Panic engulfed us as we frantically called the police, struggling to remember the address, or even the street where we had followed Andrew earlier that night. One of my friends claimed he still remembered the route, and with the police in tow, we set off. They escorted us to the building while 2 officers from the front car went inside to investigate. We waited anxiously by the other car, each passing minute feeling like an eternity, filled with fear and dread. Finally, one of the officers emerged and approached us, asking us to come inside to identify a body. My heart felt like it had been crushed as John and Eddie burst into tears, not wanting to go in. Summoning every ounce of courage, I followed the officer into the building, which turned out to be an abandoned storage facility rather than an apartment complex. And there, in a closet with its door swung open, was a lifeless body. The face stared blankly at the ceiling, its mouth frozen in a lifeless grimace. It was a horrifying sight, but even at that moment, I knew it wasn't Andrew. The blonde hair was a stark contrast to Andrew's jet-black locks. The police had already combed the area and found nothing. I couldn't help but look inside the closet where I believed Andrew might be hiding. To my dismay, it was empty. No sign of him. Not even a cell phone. We all did our best to push the traumatic events out of our minds. It was the middle of the night when I received another phone call. I answered, and despite the bad reception, I recognized the faint yet familiar voice saying my name, Andrew. I yelled out his name in relief, but the sound of a door slamming shut in the background abruptly ended the call. Despite my repeated attempts, Andrew didn't pick up again. In a state of panic, I immediately dialed the police and had them trace the call. To my surprise, the call was not originating from Nevada. It was coming from New Jersey, our own town, not too far away. The police assured me they were sending someone to the house, but I couldn't sit idly by. I had to go there myself. I entered the address into my GPS, jumped into my car, and raced toward the destination, heart pounding with anxiety. It took me just 5 minutes to reach the vacant house on the corner. Nervously, I sneaked up to the front door and pressed my ear against it, hoping to catch any sound from inside. I could hear small cracks and snaps from upstairs, indicating someone was moving on the wooden floor. I was convinced that Andrew was in there. With a surge of adrenaline, I climbed inside through the window. However, before I could even begin my search, I noticed someone standing at the edge of the hallway. I couldn't see their face, only their pale legs and long black hair flowing down their shoulders. It was the same woman I had seen in the house before. Fear gripped me, expecting her to charge at me like a character in a horror movie. Instead, she turned and ran in the opposite direction. I heard a door slam shut, followed by heated yelling between a man and a woman. Then, I heard heavier footsteps thudding up the stairs. That was my cue to escape. I quickly left the house and hid in a nearby bush. Within seconds, a police car arrived, sirens blaring. The police entered the house, and I stayed hidden, not wanting to startle them. I waited anxiously by the car parked out front, and after what felt like an eternity, one of the officers emerged, leading a man in handcuffs. I introduced myself and warned the police that there was also a woman inside, but they couldn't find her. They discovered an open window in one of the bedrooms, suggesting that she had escaped. Andrew was found locked in a closet upstairs. He was in terrible shape, malnourished, with long, dirty hair. The stench was overwhelming, a testament to the horrors he had endured. The police checked the records but couldn't find any information about the man's identity or the woman who had been involved. The man claimed he had only known her for a day. Nothing made sense, and it still doesn't. Andrew revealed that he had been raped, beaten, and barely given enough food to survive. I can't even fathom the courage it took for him to share such a traumatic experience. Among our group of friends, I was the only person he confided in. Whenever anyone asks, I simply say, I don't know what happened. As for how Andrew and everyone else is doing, it's not anything interesting. The only thing I can say is that I'm waiting for the day I see any of these monsters again, and I'll be ready to call the police or take them on myself.